Welcome to Hope in the Face of Cancer, where we share real stories of courageous people in their cancer journey. Today, it is my privilege to welcome someone whose life is a testament to courage, compassion, and purpose. Andrea Wilson Woods is the founder and president of Blue Fairy, the Adrienne Wilson Liver Cancer Association, a nonprofit organization dedicated to liver cancer awareness, education, and advocacy. Andrea established Blue Fairy in memory of her younger sister Adrienne, whom she raised before losing her to stage 4 liver cancer. Andrea is many things: a patient advocate, speaker, podcaster, and award-winning author. She's a voice for patients and caregivers across the country, bringing strength to countless families navigating liver cancer today. Her ability to transform personal heartbreak into a mission of hope has inspired people far beyond the liver cancer community. Andrea, we're so grateful to have you here with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Darcy.
Well, I can't wait to have our audience just hear your story. It's so incredible. And I know you must be so proud of all that you're accomplishing in your sister's honor. But, this life's work that you have created has been born from a very personal place as guardian and caregiver for your sister. And then Blue Fairy was born. So tell us about Blue Fairy and how you're honoring Adrienne through your mission.
Sure. So, Blue Fairy's mission is to prevent, treat, and cure primary liver cancer, specifically hepatocellular carcinoma, also known as HCC, through research, education, and advocacy. And hepatocellular carcinoma, again, or HCC, is the most common type of primary liver cancer. And one of the most frustrating things about it is that it's deadly, but it's also
Mm,
highly preventable. And we
mm.
know what the major risk factors are. And so that's one of the challenges we come up against. And so we have our three pillars of research, education, advocacy, but we started from day one with education.
Absolutely. So, when you founded the organization, what need did you see in the liver cancer community that wasn't being met? Was it that awareness and education primarily?
There wasn't a single nonprofit focused on liver cancer in the US, like not
Wow.
a single one. And this quote is attributed to Lily Tomlin, but she supposedly said, I thought someone should do something about that. And I realized that someone was me.
Mm.
And I actually approached the largest liver disease organization in the US and wanted to volunteer for them. Like that was
Yeah.
it. There was no
Yeah.
plan on my calendar, my life to start a nonprofit
Right.
ever, ever. And I thought I'll just volunteer for them. My background is teaching and marketing and writing, and they had nothing about liver cancer in their website. And I did everything in my power, went up the chain of command, and basically they were like, no, thank you. We want nothing to do with liver cancer, which I found out
Wow.
later was an actual edict in the organization. And I got off the phone and I was so frustrated because I could see the trajectory of liver cancer.
Yeah.
I had no doubt in my mind where it was going to go, both in the US and worldwide. It was going to go up, up, up. And that was the moment where I was like, I guess I have to do this.
Wow. Well, thank you for stepping up and really filling that gap. What are you most proud of that you all have been able to accomplish with the organization since you stepped into that gap and started to make a difference?
I'm most proud of that patients are living longer. They have more treatment options, even with advanced disease. When Adrienne was diagnosed, there was absolutely nothing for advanced HCC. And in fact, the
Mm.
chemotherapy regimen she was given was not even applicable for liver cancer. It was kind of
Mm.
a shot in the dark, like, let's try. But now we have so many targeted therapies, systemic therapies, immunotherapies, and so, even if you are diagnosed in the later stages, as most people are, patients are living longer with a better quality of life. It's not a cure
Mm.
yet, but we're getting
Yeah.
there.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Well, you have had quite the journey as a caregiver with multiple family members, but certainly your journey with Adrienne was instrumental in this path that you've taken. What were some of the unexpected challenges that you encountered caring for Adrienne?
Before cancer
Yeah.
or during?
Yeah,
Um,
certainly the typical teenage
Oh, no,
woes.
that
But
wasn't so bad. No. I- the biggest challenge was happened very much at the beginning. So she had been living for me for about 5 months in Los
yeah.
Angeles. She came to visit for what was supposed to be a 2 week Christmas vacation. And the day after Christmas, our mother called and said she didn't want to be a mother anymore.
Mm,
And Adrienne's father died in a car accident before she was born. So same mother, different fathers.
yeah.
And our mother was a drug addict, and her life had
Mm,
just unraveled at that point. And I told our mother that if I took Adrienne that Christmas, I wasn't going to give her back. And
yeah.
here she is. She's 8. I'm 22. My life was a hot mess. But
Wow.
I got custody. I got physical custody, later sued for full legal custody and won. But we had this very pivotal moment about 5 months into her living with me, right after she turned 9 years old. We were at a restaurant and she got mad when the staff sang happy birthday to her. And I'm talking, she was 9 and she became a 2-year old. She was kicking and screaming and hitting. And we left the restaurant immediately.
Wow.
I was literally dragging her to the car and got back to our apartment. And I just couldn't believe it. I said, "You have to stop." And she started yelling at me and said that she didn't want to live with me anymore. She wanted to move back to Alabama. She wanted to move home.
Mm,
But she didn't know that those were not options.
yeah.
And so I called her bluff, really. I called Northwest Airlines, made a reservation for the next day to send her home. And this is back in the good old days for you younger people,
Yeah.
when you could call an airline and they would hold that
Right.
reservation for 24 hours without payment, you know? And then I said, pack your stuff. And then I walked into the living room and I really just in that moment was trusting my gut and praying I was doing the right thing. And I just sat there. And for the next hour, I could hear her throwing things around her room. I could hear her just yelling, screaming. And I didn't move. And then she came into the living room and she said, "I don't want to leave, Sissy."
Mm,
And I said, "Well, in that case, we need some rules. And the first one is you will never act that way in public again." And she never did. And then the second one, which I think is really important because it comes up for patients too, is I set a very firm boundary that became the blueprint for our relationship. I said, "Look, here's the deal. I have to be your parent first, then your sister. And one day when you grow up, I really hope I'm your friend.
mm,
But that has to be the blueprint." And
yeah.
she said, "Okay, parent, sister, friend, got it." And that was an absolute pivotal moment in our whole relationship.
Oh, that's incredible. And what an incredible thing for you to, take her and become not just her sister, but her mother, her friend. Thank you for all that you did for her. Tell us a little bit about how you uncovered her illness.
I came home from work on Wednesday, May 16th. It's funny when you ask patients, they don't always remember the day. All
Yeah.
caregivers do. We all
Yeah.
do. I came home and normally when I walked in, we had a rule in our house, homework first, and normally she would be at the kitchen table doing her homework. And instead, on this day, I came in and she was lying on the living room floor in a fetal position, clutching her right side and saying, "I
Mm,
can't breathe." And so we went to her pediatrician, who did not like what he saw, immediately sent us to the only hospital in Burbank, California. And they said, "We're going to do a CAT scan."
mm,
And at this point, we still have no idea what's
right.
going on. And the ER doctor came in, and I don't think he had ever given this kind of news before. I mean, I
Mm,
knew from the look on his face how bad it
yeah.
was. And he wouldn't look at her. So pay
Mm,
attention to body language, people.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
he wouldn't say her name. And he said she has tumors in her liver and lungs. We are not equipped to handle the situation because they didn't see pediatric patients. And he said, "We've arranged for an ambulance to Children's Hospital. I'm sorry." And he walked out. And
Wow.
that was day one. And so from the time I came home to the time we got that news was about 6 hours. And we went to Children's Hospital that night.
And she was hearing that as well. She was in the room
Yes.
hearing that as well.
Yeah.
How did both of you process that news?
Well, she had a very dry sense of humor and she loved to
Mm,
make me laugh. And when she was being wheeled in for the CAT scan, she said, "Hey, sissy, watch it be cancer." And I was like, "Bite your tongue." And she laughed and I laughed. And so the doctor gives this news. He walks out. We look at each other. We burst into tears. And again, this was a kid who did not normally cry.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden she stopped crying and she said, "I was just joking." And I said, "What?" And she goes, "I was just joking when I said watch it be cancer." And then we just started laughing
Mm.
and all over again. And I thought, gosh, if anyone hears this, they're going to think we're crazy. We've gone from wailing, crying to laughing so hard my stomach was hurting. But that was Adrienne, you know, that was Adrienne.
Mm. Oh, wow. Incredible. So what was that treatment journey like? What did she have to go through for her treatment?
So, because there were no advanced drugs, like I said, they just came up with a very toxic chemotherapy
Yeah,
regimen, what many patients now call the red devil, a drug
right.
commonly used to treat breast cancer, and then another drug that I call the yellow devil, which when the pediatric oncologist told Adrienne that that drug would cause hearing loss, she lost her mind
Mm,
and she said no. And she was a budding musician. Music was her life. And she said, "I'd rather be dead than deaf."
mm,
And while we did not love this pediatric oncologist, he wasn't a good fit for us and our family, and also didn't have the experience in her particular cancer. He did one thing right. He had her sign off on her chemotherapy permission slip, which I still have. And
wow.
she knew that her signature wasn't necessary, but it really gave her back that power. And
Yeah.
sure enough, after 2 rounds, she started to have hearing loss. And so we stopped that particular drug and found a different one. But it was really brutal. Um, I feel like the doctors were not honest with us and danced around things.
Mm,
The same pediatric oncologist said now would be a good time to go to Hawaii, and which I guess was his euphemism for she's dying, but and there's nothing we can do. But I was like, Hawaii? Like I just was, and I didn't say this to him at the time, but I was like, wait, first of all, if you got to know your patient, you would know she wants to go to Ireland. And second of all, who's going to pay for this magical trip to Hawaii?
right.
I mean, really, who's going to pay for this? So it was very, very frustrating overall. And it took a long time, but we got a second opinion, and it took an even longer time to convince. I didn't have insurance for me. I had insurance for her due to a loophole in the California law. And so it took forever to convince the insurance to transfer her care to UCLA. But by that time, even though UCLA was amazing to work with and really respected her wishes, by that time, her body had just been wrecked by 4 really toxic rounds of chemotherapy.
Yeah. What were the unexpected challenges? I mean, obviously, the whole journey is incredibly challenging, and here you're thrust into being mom and sister. But were there anything that really you reflect on that you maybe not have expected in terms of the challenges of that journey, caring for her emotionally or spiritually?
Um, I was surprised by the occasional incompetence. I was very
Mm,
surprised by that. Um, For example, I took copious notes all the time,
hmm
and this was in 2001, and Children's Hospital was making that transition from paper records to digital records.
hmm
And when we checked in for her second round of chemotherapy, they had lost her patient records
Oh
from her
my
first
goodness.
round. And they came to me because they knew I took these notes. And all of a sudden it's like my spiral notebook wasn't the enemy anymore. And they came to me and said, "Do you know how much Dilaudid we gave her for pain during that first round?" I'm like flipping my pages. I'm like, "Yes, I do." Um, we found out she had some bad reactions to certain medications, and that was not, as soon as it happened, that was not well documented. And
Mm,
so the next nurse would come in and accidentally give her that drug again. Um, it just those were some of the more frustrating medical challenges. She had a port in her chest, which she was happy about because she hated needles. And
Mm,
yet one time when we went in for her routine labs, the nurse looked at the port, an oncology nurse looked at the port and said, I don't know how to use that thing. And I was like, well, find someone who does. I mean,
wow.
that's the whole point of having the port. Um, so it was little things like that surprised
Yeah.
me and frustrated me.
Well, you probably didn't realize it then, but those experiences were training you to be an advocate, and to help others, learn to advocate for themselves and their loved ones in the cancer journey for sure.
Yeah, I think it helped that because our mother was a nurse, I grew up around hospitals. I
Yeah.
was not intimidated by doctors. I wasn't afraid to ask questions and demand answers. And also, I wasn't there to be liked. And
Yeah.
and so I say that a lot to caregivers. It's not your job to be liked. Don't worry about being liked. Yes, you want them to love your loved one. Yes, absolutely. Um, but you're not there to be liked. You're there to stand up for what your loved one wants.
That's a great piece of advice. What other advice would you give someone who's just beginning the journey of caregiving?
With any serious diagnosis, you have to get a second opinion. It is not easy. I know that.
Yeah.
But you have to find a way. And at Blue Fairy, we help facilitate second opinions. I was thinking about this the other day that years ago in my old house in Southern California, I had the original hardwood floors resurfaced. I got three bids. And
Mm,
I started thinking about why do we treat our homes better than we treat our bodies?
mm,
So you have to get a second. And I mean, I know caregivers who it took a third opinion to get the right diagnosis. So you have to keep fighting for that. Also, you have to keep copies of everything, absolutely everything. I still recommend that people print everything out and put it into a very large 3-inch, three-ring binder and put everything in that binder from test results to current labs to current medications, allergies, insurance claims, everything. And the beauty of putting everything in one binder is that the binder goes with the patient. So if you, the caregiver, on that off chance you can't take your loved one to that doctor's appointment, or they need to go alone, or you're working full time, the binder goes with the patient, and all the answers to questions doctors may have are in the binder.
yeah. It sounds like, that really would give you control in a situation where you don't have much,
Yeah,
that
you have to stay
um,
organized. You have to.
absolutely. So Adrienne's voice still lives on through I'd rather be dead than deaf. So tell us about the book.
Well, now you know where the quote comes from. It is a
Yes.
direct quote from her. And she was a very prolific writer. And from the
Mm,
time she was 10, she kept journals, and she was an incredibly talented artist. And she had started an online journal about a year before she was diagnosed, and she continued writing in that online journal. So her book is a compilation of her journals starting from the year before diagnosis, going all the way up until just a few weeks before she died, her very last entry, as well as her artwork going from age 7 all the way up to age 15. Again, just sketches she made before she died and poetry. And all the proceeds of the book do go to Blue Fairy.
that's amazing. Tell us about that last entry.
The last entry was really hard for me to read.
Yeah.
Um, she was very frustrated and angry. Um, she was an amazing kid. I never saw her feel sorry for herself. I never saw her say, "Why me?" when literally that's all I was saying in my head
Yeah.
was, "Why her?" But I never saw that from her. But certainly she experienced the full gamut of emotions from sadness to depression to frustration. And that last journal entry was um, really yelling at the world about you don't understand how hard this is when my bones are digging into me and I can't sit comfortably. And it was just like in all caps and lots of exclamation points. And
Wow.
so it's really that's a really hard one for me to read, that last entry.
Yeah. What do you want readers of the book to most take away about life facing illness?
Well, if I look at the reviews, it's really about her resilience
Mm,
in the face of cancer. I mean, I
yeah.
always thought that she handled cancer better than any adult, but now seeing other people
Hmm.
and seeing the impact the book has had on people, it's like, okay, so it wasn't just me. It's like she handled cancer with so much courage and dignity and grace and lots of humor. Lots of humor. She even made a joke about, and this was an email that she did not send, but I used it as the introduction to the journal, which I edited, because it's real insight to who she is. But she makes a joke about like what to say and what not to say at her funeral. So,
Oh my goodness, I wish I could have known her and met her. She just sounds incredible.
yeah, my husband's reading it right now, and he's so funny. He goes, I was not this deep at her age.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I love that, Blue Fairy is a tribute to her as well. Tell us, where did Blue Fairy come from? The name.
Yeah, so I knew I wanted liver cancer in the name so people knew what we did, and I
Yeah.
wanted her name in the name as a tribute to her, but I felt like something was missing from a marketing perspective, and I
Hmm.
just didn't know what it was. So I sent out an email to 10 people, all of whom were sort of like aunts and uncles to her. None of my
Mm,
friends had had kids yet, and so they all were very close to her. And I said, something's missing, right? So I don't know what it is, but something's missing. And every person came back with some version of Blue Fairy because blue was her favorite color.
mm.
And I wouldn't let her dye her hair until she was 14. And she dyed it every color in the rainbow, but she always came back to blue. So it was faded blue when she checked into the hospital. And she got a blue wig to maintain her look, like a bright blue wig. And she wore these blue butterfly wings that summer, and she just loved fairies. And she was actually buried in those blue butterfly
Ah,
wings. And we called her our blue fairy. And so that's where it came from. So I feel like everyone saw it but me, but I'm glad I
oh,
asked.
yes. Oh my gosh, that's so special. And this organization has really grown into a national force for liver cancer awareness and education and support. Can you tell us a story or two about the impact of the organization, something that you're really carrying with you with pride?
Well, one of my favorite stories is an amazing person who volunteers for us now, Sharon Dixon, and she found us very early in her husband's journey with HCC, like almost at the very beginning. She found our private HIPAA compliant community. And she says being in that community, getting that support as a caregiver was so critical for her so she could show up for her husband. But it also helped her better understand and how to advocate for him. They live in a very, very rural town. As she likes to say, like their town is not even on the most maps, and she's about 90 minutes east of Dallas. The one community oncologist they had came to town one day a week. He had
Mm,
no expertise in
right.
HCC. And so they soon found their champion, and it was his GI, but they still had to travel an hour just to see him. The other thing that just touches me so much is they decided to go to hospice at a certain point,
Mm,
and no one in their family supported this. Everybody was against it. And so it's really hard to stand firm when you have that backlash from people around you. But they did. And it turned out to be an incredible experience. And the last year of his life was he lived. He had fun. They renewed their vows. They did things they'd always wanted to do.
mm,
He died at home in her arms. He wasn't in pain. And he the day before he died, he was out in their, garden chopping wood and stuff. So he's had such an amazing quality of life. And that's what I wish for more people
yeah.
is a better understanding of hospice and also the difference between palliative care and hospice.
Why don't you explain that? Because that is something that many people, even people in the healthcare community, don't articulate well. So I think our audience would love to hear that from your perspective.
Palliative care, and that was never, those terms were never used the
Yeah.
entire time with my sister. Palliative care is any care that helps your quality of life, and it's available from day one. So what that can mean, doctors are more focused on the medical aspects, but that can also include emotional support. Maybe you see a therapist, right? Maybe both the patient and caregiver see a therapist separately or together, or some combination. It can mean spiritual support. Um, but it can be medical. I mean, I think a good example of palliative care is that we didn't get in the beginning, but we got later, was nothing that they gave Adrienne for nausea, very common with these chemotherapy drugs, helped. And it was super frustrating. And it wasn't until we got a new pediatric oncologist that he brought up marijuana. And
Mm.
and I am so straight-laced. I was like, I don't know where to buy that. And Adrienne didn't miss a beat. She was in high school, guys, right? She goes, "Oh, I know a few people. I know a few people." And but that was a form of palliative care because that made all the difference in the world. And my understanding is about 50% of people don't do well in the synthetic form, but she did. So we had a prescription. It was covered by her insurance. And Marinol made all the difference in the world in eliminating her nausea, keeping her appetite up. Um, it was great. It was real. I think other doctors were scared to give it to a teenage girl, but
Yeah.
that's a form of palliative care. Hospice, you have to be eligible for hospice. You have to be referred to hospice by a physician who believes you have less than 6 months to live. And in hospice, you're no longer seeking treatment. However, you can leave hospice anytime. So if a clinical
Yeah.
trial comes along and it's really promising, you can say, okay, I'm leaving hospice to go do this clinical trial. So hospice has this two-way door where you can stay, you don't have to, you can stay, you can go. It doesn't mean that you can no longer ever do treatment again. But the goal of hospice is to make the remaining 6 months of your life better and pain-free and more comfortable. And it's amazing to me how many people I've met who go to hospice early enough and then end up having to get it renewed because they live beyond the 6 months.
Yeah, sorry.
But, and that's something that was certainly never brought up to us, not until 2.5, 3 days before Adrienne died.
Mm, that's heartbreaking.
Very
Well,
common, though.
it is. It is all too common. Just that avoidance of those conversations, or just really the lack of putting the patient at the center and their whole self. But I appreciate that explanation for our audience of the difference, because I think so many people hear palliative care and they think hospice, but it's
Yes.
so much more about caring for the whole person
Yeah.
in the journey. And of course, one of those ways of caring for the whole person, as you mentioned, is emotional support. And I'm excited that Blue Fairy and CanCare are partnering together to support patients and caregivers. What excites you about this partnership?
Well, I know it's something that our community really needs, and it's very difficult to find liver cancer survivors.
Yeah.
You can find more caregivers, but it's very difficult to find liver cancer survivors. So I'm optimistic about that. I'm also really impressed with how CanCare trains their volunteers. I mean, that's really critical. Um, I don't think it's one thing to be a caregiver to someone you love. It's different being a support person
Yeah.
for a stranger initially. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
As are we, and I think it's so important for the nonprofit community to work together. We all have different missions. Even nonprofits in the cancer space, missions are different, and so being able to partner together, and we can do things that you don't do, and you do things we don't do, just provides the patient or the caregiver so many options, for hope and healing in their cancer journey. So thank you
You're
for.
preaching to the choir on that one. I think you might need to shout it from the rooftops for other people, but
I know. Work together, people. Let's work together. That's right. So you are an incredible, not only advocate, but storyteller. In telling Adrienne's story with such openness and candor, what might you have discovered about her or about yourself that you didn't realize before, maybe when you were in the thick of it?
Um, I've already said, how impressed I am with how she handled everything. Um, and she was very thoughtful about it. And for me as a caregiver whose child and sister was only 15 years old, I had to live in a very healthy state of denial. Adrienne
Mm,
did not. She did not. She looked forward, she remained positive, she exemplified resilience, and there was a point where she knew she was dying and she didn't tell me. She protected
mm,
me, but she
wow.
knew. And so, for example, we went to a barbecue over Labor Day weekend. So this is now early September, and she's been doing this now for almost 4 months, and she's on her fifth round of chemotherapy. Although now it's a different type and it's at home, which was great. And she went to that barbecue, even though she didn't feel well. She showed up because her best friend was there. And I know now that she knew that was going to be the last time she was going to see her.
Mm,
And after that, she wanted to go back to school. So I had to fight the school district, my former employer, by the way. I had to fight them to get her what she needed. So advocating again for her educational needs. And she loves school so much and she wanted some kind of normalcy to her
yeah.
life. And so she went, quote, back to school at homeschool with me as her teacher for certain subjects and then other teachers stepping in. Um, but she knew she was dying and she did not want anyone to see her that way. So that last month of her life, she did not allow any friends to come over anymore. She would
Mm,
talk to them on the phone or instant message them, but she wouldn't allow people to come over.
bless her.
Yeah.
Why do you think storytelling has such power? I mean, you do so much of that through her story. But why do you think storytelling is so healing?
Well, you can shout from the rooftops all the numbers in the world,
Mm,
but that's very intellectual. It's not an emotional connection with someone.
mm,
Yeah, I remember years ago when we were partnering with an organization and they asked me to come to DC to help lobby for the passing of the Viral Hepatitis Testing Act.
mhm.
And here I was in my congressman's office, and this was very early on in me ever doing anything like this. And I was given this, stat sheet of the number of new liver cancer cases. And certainly it's very prevalent in California, where I lived at the time. And there was just, I mean, the staffer's face was just blank. And I
Right.
was like, okay,
Yeah.
I am shifting gears here. Screw these numbers. She doesn't care.
Yeah.
But she wasn't that much older than my sister. Just
Mm.
FYI, the world is run by 24-year-olds.
Yes.
These staffers, right? They are gatekeepers. And I was like, I need to hit her where it counts. She had gone to the same high school as my sister. And so instead, I threw out the numbers and I just told Adrienne's story. And
Wow.
you could see her eyes getting really big and you could see the connection. And she was all in at that point. And
Yeah.
so stories, personal stories, you know, can move mountains. Just one person's story can make all the difference in the world.
That's right.
And it's because of that emotional connection that, it brings us together. It connects us as people.
That's right. When we published our book, Hope in the Face of Cancer, it's chocked full of stories. And what we want is for someone who maybe has been recently diagnosed or their loved one's been recently diagnosed to pick that up and find someone that they said, oh my gosh, that's just like me.
Yeah.
And look, they're 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out, just that hope of survivorship um, through
Yeah,
connection.
that's what I craved when
Yeah.
Adrienne was diagnosed. I looked and looked and looked and looked.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until August that I had found a handful of people in Japan who had stage 4 liver cancer that had spread to their lungs and for some of them also to their bones, and they had survived. And yet when I brought that to the attention of the doctors, because it was all investigational, this particular therapy, I was completely dismissed.
Mm.
So
It is so sad. As we near the end of our conversation, I want to do a little quick fire with you.
Okay, let's do
Say
it.
the say the first thing that comes to mind, your go-to song when you want to be lifted up or inspired.
Fighter by Christina Aguilera.
Oh, it's a good one. Okay. The funniest or most lighthearted moment you remember from your journey.
With Adrienne.
Yeah.
Um, okay, some people are not gonna think this is funny, but I do. We were at her favorite restaurant. This was like early September. And she's really getting frailer, weaker. She's lost a tremendous amount of weight. And she was so disappointed because she couldn't even eat their mac and cheese because it was just too
Oh,
rich. So she
oh,
ordered soup. And she had shaved her head into four mohawks before chemotherapy and then called it her quad hawk. And
oh
then
my
she
goodness.
continued to kind of like style her hair. And so the thing about Adrienne was she never lost her hair follicles. I don't know why, but she really
Yeah.
didn't. She barely lost her eyebrows. And so if you just saw her, you didn't know that she was
Yeah.
sick. And she had this perfectly round head. So she just rocked this look. Anyway, so this 19-year-old busboy was flirting with her,
Oh
trying to
my
get her
goodness.
attention. And I could see it, and our two friends could see it, but she was completely ignoring it. She was very focused on, I just want to see if I can get this soup in my body and keep it down, right? And finally he came over and I felt so sorry for this young kid. And he said, "Oh my God, you look so cool. Like, what made you shave your head? You look amazing."
Oh.
And she didn't even miss a beat. She was like halfway, like about to put the spoon in her mouth, and she just flicked her eyes up at him and she said, "I have cancer." And he almost dropped every dish in his hand. I mean,
I
I
would
felt so
imagine.
bad, but we laughed so hard, and she just said, "He won't be back." And he didn't come back, and she
Uh,
wasn't trying to embarrass him at
right.
all. But she had just kind of gotten to this point where she didn't want to answer questions anymore, and she
Yeah.
was focused on finishing her soup. Like that's all she wanted to do. She did not care about this 19-year-old boy flirting with her. So,
Oh, what a firecracker. Oh my
yes.
goodness. Well, I think I know, but I might be surprised the answer to this one. A quote or phrase you live by.
I don't lose. I either win
Mm.
or I learn.
Ooh, that's good. That's a writer downer. I like that. And what does hope mean to you?
Well, I think it's Mark Twain who said nostalgia is the death of hope. And I
Mm.
remember when I first read that years and years ago, I was like, but I'm so nostalgic. I love
Mm.
photos. I write,
Oh,
I scrapbook. Like I am very nostalgic, but the way I look at that now is it's okay to have great memories. It's great and to keep those things, but you can't live in the past.
yeah.
So hope to me is all about the future. It's all about the future, looking forward,
Yes.
um, focusing on things you can control. I think that's very, very important.
Yes.
So that's what hope means to me. It's
I
the
love
future.
that. Yeah, I love that. So, for anyone listening who may be in a caregiver role, what message of hope would you want to leave with them today?
Hmm. You have more control than you think you do. But if you are the caregiver and you're not the one who's sick, you still have to respect the patient's decision.
Mm,
I did not want to stop that one chemotherapy drug that was causing hearing loss,
yeah,
but I had to respect Adrienne's decision because she couldn't control the tumors growing in her body, but she could control the medicine going into her body. And so as a caregiver, and I've seen it many, many times where what the caregiver wants and what the patient wants are just completely different.
yeah,
And so when I talk to caregivers, I say at the end of the day, you really have to respect what the patient wants.
yeah. That's tough. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your story, your message of hope. I feel like I know more. I feel like I know your sister a little bit more today, and I can't wait to read the book. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of Hope in the Face of Cancer. If you or someone you love is facing cancer, CanCare is here to support you. Visit us at cancare.org to learn more. Until next time, remember, there is always hope in the face of cancer. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Hope in the Face of Cancer, a survivor by your side. If you or someone you know is facing cancer or is supporting a loved one through their journey, we invite you to share this podcast. Thank you for your support in our efforts in the cancer community. No one should face cancer alone.